Hello, my name is Paul Stevers, and I'm going to introduce you to an opportunity that has emerged for mitigating carbon emissions on a very large scale in a relatively short amount of time. This solution can be scaled globally. The world is getting warmer at an increasing rate. Shown next is a short video segment that illustrates how the warming trend is correlating with rising atmospheric CO2 levels, and that these levels are continuing to rise at an increasing rate.
The world is getting warmer and at an increasing rate. A large reason for this is CO2 levels in the atmosphere. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, they have risen at an unprecedented rate. Rising CO2 levels had been correlating closely with rising global temperatures since 1880. This graph shows rising CO2 levels on a shorter timescale as measured at the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii. On an even shorter timescale, you can see average CO2 levels have continued to rise despite a global economic slowdown from the coronavirus pandemic, which is shown by the black line. The red line on this graph shows the seasonal variations.
Why are these CO2 levels continuing to rise at an increasing rate? There are several factors contributing to this rising CO2 levels, but the main reason for this rise is that the total overall global energy demand appears to be increasing faster than the renewable energy generation growth rate. Therefore, carbon emissions need to be mitigated on a much larger scale than what has been occurring. In addition to expanding carbon-free energy generating solutions as fast as possible, the world needs to implement carbon capture from existing fossil fuel energy sources on a very large scale. Fortunately, there is now a proven breakthrough technology that captures 100% of the CO2 created when generating power from fuels such as natural gas, biogas from landfills, syngas from coal, and diesel fuel. It is called the alum-Fendt cycle, or in less words, the alum cycle. In addition, there are additional carbon capture technologies such as Shell's CANSOLVE CO2 capture system that can be added to existing power plants. The captured CO2 can be utilized for a wide range of uses, including vertical farming, as well as being sequestered in the ground. The alum cycle includes the following steps in its process. First, it burns natural gas with pure oxygen. Then the resulting CO2 is recycled through the combustor, turbine, heat exchanger, and compressor, creating a relatively low-cost power with zero carbon emissions. The captured CO2 is pipeline ready and can be either sequestered or sold to medical, agricultural, or industrial sectors. The next slide is an animated video segment about a natural gas-fueled power plant that uses this cycle.
Net Power uses supercritical CO2 instead of steam to produce power. Natural gas is combusted with hot, recuperated CO2 and oxygen, preventing NOx production. Burning with oxygen, known as oxycombustion, is typically uneconomic because oxygen is expensive to produce. Net Power overcomes this problem by recuperating the majority of the produced CO2 into the combustor, dramatically lowering oxygen requirements. The resulting working fluid of high-pressure CO2 and water is expanded through a turbine and then cooled in a heat exchanger. Water is removed, and the remaining nearly pure carbon dioxide stream is compressed and pumped back to high pressure. Excess pipeline-ready CO2 is exported before the working fluid is reheated in the heat exchanger and returned to the combustor. This breakthrough process produces low-cost electricity, eliminates water consumption, and is emissions-free.
The alum cycle can be implemented on a global scale relatively quickly for several reasons. First, companies around the world can license this technology from Net Power, which is a privately held technology licensing company. The owners of this licensing company have considerable experience, capacity, and credibility in the power generation industry, which include Exelon Corporation, McDermott International Limited, and Occidental Petroleum, or Oxy. Lastly, equipment manufacturers and contractors around the world that are currently supplying, constructing, and/or operating conventional power plants can also build and operate the alum cycle power plants. Therefore, capacity exists for rapid large-scale implementation of this cycle starting now. As I mentioned earlier, There are carbon capture technologies such as Shell's CANSOLVE CO2 capture system. This system is now in use in many locations and is declining in cost. It can be added to existing power plants to enable carbon capture on a large scale. In a similar way as the alum technology can be utilized, companies around the world can license the CANSOLVE system from Shell. Initially, CO2 captured from these power plants would be mostly sequestered in the ground. However, once there is a reliable source of low-cost CO2 available, this CO2 can be used for many other uses, including accelerating plant growth in indoor farms, strengthening concrete building materials, and production of carbonated beverages. There are several sequestration options for CO2 captured from power plants. This includes injecting CO2 into oil and gas fields, into balsamic formations, and into salt caverns. Carbon dioxide can be captured from power plants using the alum cycle, can be complemented from other sources that use other carbon capture technologies. For example, carbon dioxide can be captured from existing cement plants and combined with carbon dioxide from power plants in the same pipeline for transfer to long-term storage or for utilization. Companies with sequestration expertise can engage with major carbon emitters such as power generation utilities and cement manufacturing companies to create and operate commercially viable large-scale sequestration projects. Once a project is viable, smaller sources of captured CO2 can be added to this sequestration project. Power plants combined with carbon capture can help make an electricity grid that is also powered by renewable energy farms more reliable. For example, if wind power is not available for a few days, these power plants can provide the needed electricity. Since a power plant using the alum cycle is very efficient and captures 100% of the carbon dioxide created, it can also be used during low demand periods to power direct air capture of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. If this was done, this power plant would have a significant negative carbon footprint. There is some impressive new technologies coming available to enable low-cost carbon capture from the outside air. For example, carbon engineering has developed an effective way of doing this and have made considerable progress in reducing the operating cost of this process. Shown here is an example of a combined power system for maximum reliability with negative carbon emissions. The natural gas power plant running the alum cycle enables 100% carbon capture and delivers power to the power management system. This power management system is also supplied with electricity from wind and solar farms. To help manage the power more effectively, this power management system includes energy storage to manage short-term power peaks and shortfalls. If a substantial amount of power is reduced for a long period of time, such as if there is no wind power for a few days, the power management system reduces the power to the direct air capture system of carbon dioxide. In this way, the power management system can maximize the reliability of the power to the electric grid. The carbon dioxide that is captured from the power plant or direct air capture system can be utilized in beneficial ways such as accelerating growth of food in a vertical farm or be sequestered in the ground. There are several other carbon dioxide capture systems available or under development. Shown here is a very promising one called the electro-swing absorption system that is being developed by MIT. It is essentially a large specialized battery that absorbs carbon dioxide from the air or other gas stream passing over its electrodes as it is being charged up, and then releases the gas that is being discharged. In operation, the device would simply alternate between charging and discharging, with feed gas being blown into the system during the charging cycle and then pure concentrated carbon dioxide released during the discharging cycle. If this combined power system was implemented in many locations around the world, the scale of the impact on reducing carbon emissions would be extremely large, likely in the range of billions of tons of CO2 per year. Green bonds, which are growing quickly and totaled more than $295 billion last year, can be an effective way to finance these combined power systems. Shown next is a simplified flowchart illustrating how projects using this type of combined system can be financed. Typically, green bonds are issued once a project is operational and generating income, so bridge financing is normally needed to construct and commission these combined power systems. This bridge financing normally includes at least two components. The first is the equity component that is provided by the owners of the project and the respective investors. The second component is a bank loan by one or more financing institutions like the Canada Infrastructure Bank. When the green bonds are issued to repay the bridge financing, they can be promoted to financial firms that are likely buyers of these bonds, such as the firms that have joined the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, which have a combined total of over 70 trillion US dollars under management. Therefore, there is existing financial mechanisms and capital available to finance a large-scale implementation of these combined power systems around the world. In addition to the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, there are other climate finance initiatives that include firms that would likely purchase green bonds to finance these types of combined power systems. For example, there is the Institutional Investors Group on Climate Change, which includes firms that have over $54 trillion in assets under management. Secondly, there is the Climate Action 100 Plus initiative, which includes firms with over 35 trillion US dollars under assets under management. And finally, the Coalition for the International Platform for Climate Finance, which includes firms with over $7 trillion in US assets under management. Please note that some of the financial firms that are members of one climate finance initiative listed here may also be members of other initiatives that are also listed here. It should be noted that green bonds are financing mechanisms for established and rated borrowers that have projects that meet specific environmental attributes. Therefore, a relatively new project developer that is seeking to utilize green bonds may need to partner with a larger company or government entity that is considered to be established and has an adequate credit rating. Many companies are now facilitating issuance of green bonds. To view a list of some of these companies that are doing this work, visit climatebonds.net/partners. On the next slide, I will outline steps to issue a green bond that has been suggested by Sustainalytics, which is a Morningstar company. Below are a set of steps to issue a green bond as suggested by Sustainalytics. First, you need to create a document that details the type of projects to be financed, proceeds, management of proceeds, commitment to reporting. This is called a green bond framework. Then this document needs to be verified by experts. This process is called external verification or second-party opinion. Afterwards, you can proceed like you would with any other bond. The usual steps apply here, which are similar to other conventional bonds. This includes structuring the bond by working with an investment bank or advisor and applying for a credit rating for this bond. This solution enables several different sectors of the economy to work together to benefit the whole of society. For example, capturing carbon through the Alum cycle, or with technologies like Shell's CANSOLVE system enables oil, gas, and power plant workers to continue working. As well, it helps governments and companies that depend on income from fossil fuels to transition to a low-carbon economy, which is critical for obtaining their support for this transition. It should be noted that while carbon capture is being implemented in power plants, other energy solutions such as renewable energy can and should grow as quickly as possible. To implement this solution on a global scale, it is important to build broad-based public support for it. This includes responding to related concerns, such as the ones about carbon capture and storage that have been expressed by several environmental organizations. For example, in July of 2021, about 500 organizations submitted a letter of concern about carbon capture and storage to the Canadian and U.S. governments. Therefore, I recommend that a team of experts in carbon capture, utilization, and storage industry work together to respond to the recently published concerns by these organizations. In conclusion, due to steadily rising CO2 levels, there is a need for an exponential increase in global carbon emissions mitigation measures. There is now a proven breakthrough technology that captures 100% of the CO2 generated when generating power from fuels such as natural gas, biogas, syngas from coal, and diesel fuel. It is called the Alum cycle. In addition, there is carbon capture technology such as Shell's CANSOLVE capture system that can be added to existing power plants. The CO2 captured can be utilized for a range of uses, including vertical farming as well as sequestered in the ground. Power plants with carbon capture can be combined with renewable energy farms to produce more reliable power to the electric grid and generate negative carbon emissions. This solution can be financed on a global scale with green bonds that are purchased by firms that have joined the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, which have a combined total of over $70 trillion under management. This solution helps governments, companies, and workers that depend on income from fossil fuels to profitably transition to a low-carbon economy, which is critical for their support. To help catalyze the implementation of this opportunity on a global scale, we recommend the following. First, invite independent groups such as Drawdown and the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions to work together to estimate the full potential impact of implementing this opportunity on a global scale. Since organizations like the IEA have already estimated the potential impact of some carbon capture technologies already, this estimate can build on the work that's already completed and take into account the latest technologies and strategies to accelerate carbon capture and storage globally. Second, inform companies in the oil, gas, and power plant, solar energy, and wind energy and energy storage sectors about this opportunity, which can help bring them many billions of dollars in funding. Third, inform financial institutions that facilitate issuance of green bonds of this opportunity, which will likely enable them to generate hundreds of millions of dollars in fees doing this work. Lastly, respond to the recently published concerns about carbon capture, utilization, and storage by about 500 environmental groups to help build broad-based support to implement this opportunity on a global scale. Thank you for taking the time to view this video. If you're interested in more information, please visit climatesan.org/CEM.